As I upload this video, it's been exactly 1 year since Russia invaded Ukraine. A lot has happened in these past 365 days, and today I'm gonna recount the war in just one video. Let's begin! Our first stop is March 2021, as Russian troops build up on the Ukrainian border, but most of them leave by the end of April. Surely they'll never return. It's Halloween Eve 2021, and Russian troops are congregating near the Ukrainian border. By the middle of November, there's around 100,000 of them. By early December, there's up to 175,000 of them. Following this trend to its logical conclusion, there'll be 18,350,000 troops on the border in December 2041. Throughout January, border tensions rise, numerous world leaders declare their support for Ukraine, and the UN goes on the situation. February brings even more fear among an increasing Russian threat. Russian police arrest women's basketball player Brittany Griner in a Russian airport for possessing hash oil, which surely won't become important later on. Russia recognizes the DPR and LPR, two Ukrainian breakaway regions, as sovereign states, and the official Ukraine Twitter account tweets out this legendary cartoon soon after. On February 24th, Putin announces a special military operation in Ukraine, winning the Euphemism of the Year award, and later that day, Russia's invasion of Ukraine begins. Immediately after, pro-Ukraine protests flare up worldwide, places are renamed and recolored in honor of Ukraine, hashtag Stand With Ukraine, Ukraine-colored profile pictures, and the Ukrainian flag emoji become inescapable, and Volodymyr Zelensky, the sixth president of Ukraine, becomes an international icon. Nuclear warfare spiked like crazy, how fun! Zelensky declares martial law over Ukraine, banning 16 to 60-year-old men from leaving, and a Ukrainian border guard on Snake Island tells a Russian warship to go f*** yourself before getting bombarded moments later, which is completely badass. The Russian ruble does a Dogecoin and goes to the moon, and Russia is cut off from the SWIFT international banking system, which is like getting cut off from the cheese platter at a party, yet somehow even worse. At the end of the month, a rumor of a Ukrainian flying ace nicknamed the Ghost of Kiev, who supposedly shot down 6 Russian jets on the first day of the invasion, snowballs into a worldwide legend, but not all good things last forever. Surprise! The Ghost of Kiev rumor is dead in the water, and the ruble is worth less than Robux. Putin signs a law punishing independent journalism, I mean fake news, covering the war. Companies of all shapes and sizes boycott Russia, which for most companies probably meant losing 10 customers at most, but some idiots go farther than boycotts and attack Russian-owned businesses and Russians themselves. Not cool, guys. Not cool. On March 10th, the ruble hit its lowest point ever, whilst Ukrainian and Russian emigration was reaching a very high point, with 3 million Ukrainians fleeing their country by mid-March and 400,000 Russians doing the same. Russia's attempt to take over Kiev with the same amount of planning as the Storm Area 51, they can't stop all of us, Facebook event fails, so they took the walk to Poland, I mean eastern Ukraine. Biden decides to troll the world and says, "For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power," of Putin during a speech in Warsaw, Poland. Controversial take incoming, but personally, I don't think that the president of the most powerful country ever calling on another super powerful world leader to be assassinated is a good idea. I know, call me crazy if you wish. Content warning for crimes against humanity. Go to this timestamp to skip this section if you wish. By April, much of northern Ukraine is liberated, and Ukrainian soldiers discover definitive proof of numerous war crimes, mostly sexual assault, rape, and civilian executions. The town of Bucha was one of the most brutal cases, where at least 50 civilians were executed by Russian troops. Due to acts such as these, alongside tons of indiscriminate bombings of civilian areas, the UN Human Rights Council kicks out Russia, something that should have happened, 16 years ago. Are you European and love Russian coal, seafood, cement, fertilizer, and lumber? Well, too bad, the EU just banned those imports. Biden calls Russia's actions in Ukraine a genocide, the first world leader to do so, which gets him an A+ for accuracy. Russia finally gets a victory royale as they claim victory over the eastern city of Mariupol. Ukraine wins the Eurovision Song Contest for their 3rd time, which they were bound to win even if they sang Gucci Wolf.
Gucci Wolf, Gucci Wolf, Gucci Wolf, Gucci Wolf, Gucci Wolf, Gucci Wolf, Gucci Wolf.
But congrats nonetheless. Finland applies for NATO membership, and Sweden joins in soon after, breaking over 200 years of military non-alignment. Still not longer than Switzerland. 21-year-old Russian tank commander Vadim Shishimarin is sentenced to life in prison for killing an unarmed civilian, marking the first sentenced war criminal in the invasion. Putin expands a pre-existing fast-track Russian citizenship to Ukrainians living in the Kherson and Zaporizhia Oblast in his desperate attempt to find a single Ukrainian woman near him, while the Ukrainian army expands a counteroffensive to liberate the city of Kherson in a desperate attempt to reclaim Russian-controlled cities near them. Are you European and love Russian oil and petroleum products? Banned in the EU now. The war reaches its 100th day on June 3rd, only the first of many similar milestones to come. The UN warns of starvation for tens of millions due to massively decreased Ukrainian grain exports, so the US works with Ukraine to get grain out of the country. A rebranded McDonald's called Kusna i Tochka opens in mid-June, with a logo that looks like what would happen if McDonald's and Marriott had a child, and the restaurant appears to have hastily scribbled out the McDonald's logo on their condiment packets upon opening. Are you Canadian, British, Japanese, American, or European and love Russian gold? Banned imports! Remember the DPR and LPR from earlier? Now, Syria recognizes them as sovereign states.
This is a certified
Bashar al-Assad
classic.
Russia finally secures another W by declaring victory over the Luhansk Oblast, and to celebrate, they temporarily shut down the Nord Stream 1 pipeline for maintenance, stoking fears that they would keep it down permanently, but it went back online a few days later. Surely this exact scenario, but with dire consequences, won't happen again. And increasingly down bad Putin expands that aforementioned fast-track Russian citizenship to all Ukrainians, hoping he'd get more of this, and less of this, in his country. Joining Syria, North Korea recognizes the DPR and LPR, putting Russia in the absolute best company. There's some good news as Ukraine and Russia sign a deal overseen by Turkey. Haha, very funny. Can someone fire the intern who put up a picture of the bird instead of the country? And the UN to get millions of tons of Ukrainian grain exported. There's bad news for the Donetsk Oblast, however, as Zelensky orders everyone evacuates from the Oblast, unless you want to sign this really cool form where you can give up your life to the mercy of Russian soldiers. The Zaporizhia nuclear power plant faces serious structural integrity problems and damage. But wait, there's more, because news about this power plant wouldn't shut up for 3 months. All the way through November, it went through cycles of getting hit by Russian shelling, going offline, going online, and getting visited by auditors. Returning to August, a Russian court sentences Brittany Griner to 9 years in prison and $17,000 in fines. Surely this won't lead to anything significant. By now, the war has mostly come to a stalemate, despite a new round of Russian assaults on eastern Ukraine, but Zelensky stays steadfast in his country's war efforts in a video released on Ukraine's 31st Independence Day, exactly 6 months after the war began. Russia temporarily shuts down the Nord Stream 1 pipeline for maintenance, stoking fears that they would keep it down permanently, but it went back online a few days later. Nope, they're keeping it down permanently now. Are you Canadian, British, Japanese, American, or European and love Russian oil priced more than $60 per barrel? Boom! Oil price cap! The US ambassador to Russia quits after almost 3 years on the job, supposedly as part of a normal diplomatic rotation, but I bet it was because the meetings with Russian officials became really awkward in 2022. So, how are you guys doing? Cat cut your tongue? Haha. Isn't that special military operation in Ukraine playing out beautifully? God damn it, Sergey, why do you always ruin everything? The war reaches its 200th day on, September 11th, the second of these grim milestones. Ukraine breaks the stalemate as they make numerous advances into the Russian-controlled Kharkiv Oblast, where they find torture chambers and mass graves. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland ban all Russians from entering for tourism or business reasons, whether or not they have a valid visa, confirming that their border checkpoints are run by Papers, Please fans. Russia announces a referendum in the DPR, LPR, Kherson Oblast, and Zaporizhia Oblast to have these regions annexed as part of Russia, which they do later in September. However, this annexation has only been accepted by one other country. That's right, it's North Korea! Putin mobilizes 300,000 Russian military reservists, which backfires when 370,000 people flee the country and anti-war protests flare up in Russia yet again. Don't worry though, these protesters were treated to free housing, free food, and even a high-quality security detail. In a long overdue move, Ukraine applies for NATO membership, which probably made Putin be like, bruh. I love being the Crimean Bridge, the only artery connecting Russia to Crimea. I sure hope I don't suffer an explosion caused by a truck bomb or maritime drone that no one will end up claiming responsibility for. Elon Musk announces he'll cut funding for the Starlink internet service in Ukraine, a vital service for wartime Ukraine. Why? Well, a Ukrainian ambassador coincidentally told him to f*** off under a borderline Russian propaganda tweet some days earlier, but scrap everything I said because he reversed the decision one day later. I can't believe I'm saying this, but good decision, Elon. Putin declares martial law in the DPR, LPR, Kherson Oblast, and Zaporizhia Oblast, technically making them under double martial law. How quirky and zany! Western countries accuse Iran of supplying weapons to Russia to help them invade Ukraine. Iran and Russia deny these allegations. The Pentagon accuses Iran of stationing military equipment in Crimea.
How dare you?
And the White House says Russia is advising Iran on how to put down the Masa Amini protests. Meanwhile, the Russian army got bored of indiscriminately bombing civilians and switches to bombing key Ukrainian infrastructure. This is what we in the business call evil-maxing. To troll the world even more, Russia backs out of their grain deal with Ukraine due to an attack on a Russian ship in the Black Sea that they blamed on Ukraine. Russia forcefully relocates 70,000 Ukrainians living near the Dnipro riverbank due to the Black Sea attack, which is enough people to completely fill the stadium. After a few days of increased worldwide starvation panic, no biggie, Russia rejoins their grain deal with Ukraine. Did you think that Iran allegedly supplying weapons to Russia was totally awesome? Well, get hyped because the White House just accused the world's best Korea, North Korea, of doing the same. By now, Russia's destroyed 30 to 40% of Ukraine's energy systems as attacks continue, which is a higher percentage than Russians who support the war. Oops, spoilers. Ukraine dabs on the haters by liberating the city of Kherson and many other settlements as Russian troops take the walk of shame eastward. A missile hits the Polish village of Shadavów, killing 2 people. Many assume it was a Russian missile and that the attack requires that NATO invoke Article 5 and cause World War III. But it turns out to be a Ukrainian air defense missile that went off course. Russia-owned gas company, Gazprom, threatens to send less gas to Europe because of Ukraine allegedly purposely withholding payments intended to go to Moldova. Ukraine and Moldova both deny this right after, but I bet Moldova was just glad that they were relevant in international news for once. A letter bomb injures an employee of the Ukrainian embassy in Madrid, causing Ukrainian diplomatic missions to ramp up security. I sure hope more weird events at Ukrainian missions don't happen. Multiple Ukrainian embassies receive packages with bloodied animal eyes in them. Damn, I can't believe my totally not foreshadowing comment from a few seconds ago didn't play out. Zelensky is named Times 2022 Person of the Year, which is pretty predictable with competitors like Liz Cheney, Janet Yellen, and Elon Musk. Brittany Griner is released from prison in a prisoner exchange with Victor Bout, who happens to be nicknamed the Merchant of Death. Ah, okay, very cool. By mid-December, the UN reports that 50% of Ukraine's energy infrastructure is defunct, which in scientific terms is a mother***ing load. The war reaches its 300th day on December 20th, yada yada, a depressing milestone, you know how it is. Zelensky visits the US and meets with Biden in his first time out of Ukraine since the invasion began, which I bet was a great break from seeing half-exploded buildings, scrap tank parts, constant gray skies, and the sounds of bombs dropping 24/7. Russia approves a military training program for students that would teach them how to use rifles, grenades, and about the significance of Russia and the achievements of the country and its people. I know what school I'm sending my kids to in the future. Are you Canadian, British, Japanese, American, or European and love Russia banned exporting oil to all of the G7? Get owned. Putin announces a truce for Orthodox Christmas, but unsurprisingly, neither side follows through. Bro really thinks he's the Western Front in December 1914. Russia gets a new commander for their forces in Ukraine, while Ukraine loses 4 citizens as Zelensky strips their citizenship for allegedly being Russian spies. Russia finally defeats the city of Soledar, a plan of theirs which has been in development for as long as Shrek 5. DreamWorks, come on, give the world something to unite over. The German defense minister resigns over negative media coverage, proving that the German government is full of sissy snowflakes. 3 high-level Ukrainian Interior Ministry officials and 11 others die in a helicopter crash over Kiev. Germany faces a lot, and I do mean a lot, of criticism for refusing to send tanks to Ukraine. Russia and Estonia expel each other's ambassadors and downgrade both their embassies in an epic double troll. 10 high-ranking Ukrainian officials resign amidst corruption allegations, and for the last event I'll cover in this video, Germany falls under pressure and sends 14 tanks to Ukraine. Not to be outdone, the US sends 31 tanks, owning Europe with freedom and liberty once again. Psst, hey, do you want to see some statistics? No? Too bad, let's go over a few numbers. 28 countries have given weapons to Ukraine, alongside lots of money. The most money came from the US, the UK, and EU institutions, but the most money per capita came from Estonia, Latvia, and Poland. While a lot of money went into Ukraine, a lot of anti-money, also known as boycotts, went into Russia, with over 1,000 companies boycotting the country. While Zelensky's approval rating within Ukraine is at a sky-high 90%, support for the war in Russia is between 25 to 35%, with 55% of Russians in favor of peace talks with Ukraine. Unsurprisingly, the war has created many Ukrainian and Russian refugees. 7.9 million people fled Ukraine, while 900,000 Russians had the same idea.
And Russia, Poland, and Germany
accepted the most Ukrainian refugees of anyone else. Now, to end the video on a low note, here's some death tolls. Hey, who the hell decided to rig confetti for this exact moment? Are you out of your mind? 7,000 Ukrainian civilians have died due to the war, alongside 13,000 Ukrainian military deaths, but even that pales in comparison to the Russian army's 120,000 deaths. Remember, even if it's packaged in a fun YouTube video, war is hell. Bye bye, Wolfram Pack Amigo thingies.